This is about the relationship between arrogant leadership, negative gossip, and employee resilience. And what this study looked at was the relationship between the perception of a leader being arrogant, an employee's beliefs about inconsistent leader actions, and then negative gossip about the leader among employees and their coworkers. And then they also looked at what the role of resilience, employee resilience, plays in this relationship. And so the methods that they used to conduct this study were they distributed 3 surveys to 3 Pakistani-based organizations in the banking and telecommunications industries, and they did this one survey every 3 weeks, and it ended up being completed fully by 299 participants. The surveys measured a number of things. In the first survey, they measured the employee perceptions of their supervisor's arrogance, and then also measured their own personal employee resilience. Second, they measured the opinions about the consistency of their supervisor's decision-making. And third, they measured negative gossip about the supervisor through a peer rating kind of system. And what they found here is that when employees perceive their leaders to be arrogant, it prompts them to spread negative rumors about that leader. Not super surprising, but the relationship is moderated by the presence of employees' beliefs about inconsistent leader actions. And then additionally, in encompassing that or incorporating that resilience factor, the relationship between the perception of leader arrogance and beliefs about inconsistent leader actions is moderated by employee resilience. Similarly, this relationship between you have an arrogant leader and then as a result, negative gossip, that's also moderated by resilience. What that means is that the more resilient an employee is, the less likely they're going to, 1, believe the leader is behaving inconsistently, and 2, engage in negative gossip about the leader. And the authors had a number of ideas of why this was the case. One of it being that resilient employees may feel more confident that they can handle unfavorable situations like arrogant leadership behavior. And that being that resilience kind of increases their own personal self-worth, so that when they see a leader act arrogantly, their own sense of self-worth isn't compromised or impacted. And so the need to engage in negative gossip doesn't arise. That was kind of the thought behind the author's thought behind why this relationship exists. And so some key takeaways that we have for consultants and employees, and for everyone, is that for consultants, as negative gossip can spark workplace conflict, training employees to become more resilient is key, especially when arrogant leadership is present. And I've heard of some types of resilience trainings. I'm not sure how exactly that would look. And I think it incorporates a lot of, you got to do your homework, I think, if you're in the training, because you have to kind of cultivate some self-practices. But that's something to think about when we're dealing with workplace conflict. And then for everyone, engaging in practices, this is related, engaging in practices that help increase your own sense of self-worth and resilience can be really helpful and can help you feel better equipped to handle difficult people. So I thought this was interesting. It's kind of an indirect look at how some workplace conflicts can begin through arrogant leadership and how resilience plays a major factor.
And I know this wasn't the purpose of the study, but it again goes back to leadership and how to make sure that they're also trained well, so that perhaps they are not perceived as being arrogant in the way that they handle things. But I do think that's important, because the resilience that you have in the workplace can also translate to your personal life too, right? So I think that's an important thing to be able to have. It's kind of like a self-protective measure, but it does help you, I think, get through some of those issues a little bit better without questioning anything of your own confidence or your own abilities.
Yeah. You kind of point out that I feel like there's a difference here that you can kind of see through this study between the conflict prevention and then conflict management, where prevention would be meaning training the leaders to be less arrogant. Management is what they're suggesting is resilience, training and resilience to help you manage conflict coming from arrogant leadership. So it's like there's 2 different kind of sides to it, it seems.
Yeah, I'm also taking away, I'm thinking of some clients that we've worked with that have this kind of negative, like gossip culture, and some trainings that they're kind of looking for, asking for. This is a great takeaway for me, because I don't know that I was leaning towards this resilience piece. I think I was leaning more towards effective communication, and not, while that does focus a little bit on the self, not as much as resiliency would, right? Where resiliency is much more like inner focused. But I think this is a really great takeaway. I mean, because the leadership piece aside, just having that kind of like gossip culture where, you know, maybe it doesn't necessarily stem from the leader, but it's just the culture of a small office or whatever it is, you know. It's interesting that, you know, training can be focused on the resiliency of the individual rather than the collective unit. You know, because I think like that's where my mind and a lot of us were going when we like kind of get clients that like talk about these are their pain points, right? And I think we look at it, okay, well, you're a team, so how can we do some team building, like unity, collective kind of training, whereas this is a great indication that maybe the best option is more of the individual, like the resiliency, which then could lead to, you know, understanding the collective whole. But
I mean, you point out like the importance of an intrapersonal piece kind of cultivation, and that's kind of what I feel like resilience training is, because it would be all about cultivating that inner self-worth, so that when you're confronted with behavior you necessarily wouldn't agree with or don't like, you're not personally affected by it and don't have to engage. So yeah, definitely, I think it's a cool takeaway.
But absolutely, Natalie, I mean, I agree that it does kind of point back to leadership, right? And, you know, what type of training or coaching can a leader do to alleviate the trickle down to your employees of this negative gossip kind of culture, and you being perceived as arrogant.
Right. And one thing, you know, that does catch my eye is, you know, the word perceive, right? Because this may also be that the leadership is not arrogant, and maybe that is just the perception of employees based on their own expectations or standards in the workplace, right? So there's also a level of that I think is, you know, the employees learning how to understand and empathize with their leaders too. Not just, again, I mean, some leaders really may be the root of some of the conflict that happens, but you know, I think this concept too, that it's really important for people to be resilient, and also to have an understanding generally of what's, you know, the different workplace dynamics and the things that need juggled. I mean, that's very important too.